all about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scamming, jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis XIII, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my real shop niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day pepping America overseas, pension for the workers, nigga please, embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement, I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut, foreclose a big homes out the tenement, I twist words like a speech impediment, I hope you got good credit bitch, if not better get a new job with benefits, while I play golf with niggas and get cheddar with, new money buys brand new carrots, my old money bunch of great grandparents, you got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at you, I own every gold mine in South Africa. Thanks, baby, you made me $1 billion. Plus, I own a building for each one of my children.
This is Chris J. The show is The Life of Hugo Chavez, and I know this show is gonna strike a jive in some of the people that are listening to the show, and there's some people who are just gonna call him the commie bastard or whatever. But I'm gonna explain why that's kind of a wrong idea of what to think of him, and I'm going to explain the good things he did for Venezuela and the things he had to go through to get to that point. And also, the show is being done as kind of a one-year tribute to Hugo Chavez, as 1 year ago on March 5th, which was 4 days ago, but a year ago, March 5th, 2013, Hugo Chavez lost his long battle with cancer after 4 surgeries, didn't do the job, and he battled all the way near the end, and then after that there was a fight for power. But good news is that that his government stayed in power, did not have the Capriles government, who his party should have been really called the ExxonMobil Party of Venezuela, because that's what it was. It was pretty much just a party to denationalize the oil, give it to Exxon and Mobil and all those giant corporations. And that would have rose the price of gas to points that Venezuelans could not afford. Let me remind you, the gasoline at points, I think, was 25 cents a gallon in Venezuela. And if you would have given it to Exxon Mobil, it would have sold at $3 a gallon down there. And also another thing is that whenever you let the big corporations get too much power, they pretty much make a corrupt government, because they get so much power, they're more powerful than the government, and they practically buy off the government. And that's what Hugo Chavez was able to do, was keep those big corporations in check. He also got back, I saw one in the Commerce event page, but he also got back Venezuela's gold, which, if you know, the United States does not have, we don't have our gold. Germany doesn't have their gold. A lot of countries lost their gold because the Rothschilds pretty much stole it from all around the world. You know, Libya had just gone back their gold. That was part of Gaddafi's big plan before he was killed by Barack Obama's led NATO mission over there to take down what they quote-unquote a dictator. But the truth was that they just wanted to take out one of the last non-Rothschild countries in the planet and put it on the petrodollar, because, you know, the deal was that a lot of those Arab countries over there, like Iran, Syria, they were still standing. You know, Libya, pretty much the plan was to buy oil in non-Federal Reserve notes. By doing that, we would have given the Federal Reserve a lot less power, because they would not have that giant commodity being bought in their dollars. And it's kind of the economics type deal, is that if you don't have much back in your dollar, and the deal is we wouldn't have to worry about all this if we were still in the United States dollar, not the Federal Reserve note, and we had the United States dollar backed by gold. We wouldn't have to fight these perpetual war all the time just to go get some back into our currency. Back when we had our currency on gold, And it wasn't the Federal Reserve note. This is before December 23rd, 1913, when the Federal Reserve was established. The U.S. United States dollar was 33 to 50 times more powerful and what it could buy and everything. I mean, you could buy back then, like, you almost have that stereotype of the old person saying, when I was a kid, I could buy blank and blank and blank with only $1, but that's pretty true. Back then, you could buy a lot with $1. A dollar was worth almost like $30 today, or actually more than $30. It'd be worth probably around $40 today. And, this is what the kind of things when a lot of these, what quote-unquote dictators that the mainstream media calls them, are just trying to avoid to get to a point where our money is in a system of perpetual debt with these bankers. That's what the Federal Reserve was to do. Keep America and the American people in a system of perpetual debt where every now American owes $50,000 to these corrupt bankers. In order pretty much to do that, why they did this is they'll keep America pretty much in, their property. By doing that, if you have someone that much debt, you practically own them, and then they could use it for in perpetual war. They could do other missions, and they turned America into the police of the planet. The police of the New World Order. But the deal was, the deal is that's really kind of odd is that 1913, the Federal Reserve is established in America. 1914, World War I starts. 1917, they get America into a situation that has never been done before. We had never fought a war in Europe before. We never intervened in any type of European conflict. We were in a European conflict, but it was on our own ground, which we were somewhat in the Napoleonic Wars back in 1812. In the War of 1812, that was kind of just another front to the Napoleonic Wars. We were considered co-belligerents on the French side with Napoleon and, against the British. But besides that, we never had went actually to Europe to fight a war. And that war was almost free. I mean, the circumstances were very odd. The mainstream story that you're told in your textbooks about that. I just want to finish this story and get back to the main topic, but Germany's feelings were hurt, and then they had, and then they retaliated against the Russian side over the Allies, and they were the Central Powers, and the Central Powers and the Allies fought. America jumped in and whatever after Russia. Bolshevik Revolution happened, and then we won that deal. But it's very odd how that war happened, especially when I'm pretty sure the German leader, the Kaiser of Germany, and the Russian Tsar were, I think, somewhat like cousins or something like that. It's just it looked like, that was pretty much just a staged war, and they used the United States as a police in that war, to go in, intervene with their newly acquired territory. Now, going back to Hugo Chavez. Hugo Chavez, Venezuelan leader that was from 1998 to 2013, the leader, there was a lot of propaganda put against him. But, in that 15 years, he actually faced elections. He actually had one of the best election systems in the world. Unlike ours, it's completely rigged pretty much. Venezuela is widely respected as one of the best. And Venezuela, he faced 4 elections during his 15 years of being president. And the opposition were, just a bunch of corporatist, globalist types that were in the opposition. And now, I see, this is my theory about why a lot of people, especially in this truth movement, are kind of deceived into just hating them and thinking he's another pawn in the game, even though he did everything against that he could pretty much, against these globalist bankers and everything. I think it just goes back to, you look at the kind of people that throw propaganda at him, it looks like it's still the InfoWars people that are still believing the InfoWars Alex Jones Kool-Aid, that fear-mongering Kool-Aid that Alex Jones will serve you. And, that's one of the main people. And then, of course, there's the Fox News. People are still have that reminiscent memories almost, and it's still in their brain, about all that propaganda against him, which they do that heavily because he's supposedly, they call him a communist. And it almost reminds me back of the McCarthyist rhetoric, when they wanted to discredit anybody. Edgar Hoover, he just had to drop that C word, You know, and he threw it against a lot of people. He threw it against MLK, and, you know, a lot of people, he threw it against MLK and a lot of the civil rights leaders, Edgar Hoover, just called them communists, you know. And
hey, Chris.
it's McCarthy. Yes?
Hey, Chris. This is Cole Johnson, host of the Aberration Stable Radio. I'm sitting in with Chris tonight, and I just want to throw in something there where you're right, they do that. They have done that historically, and it's kind of the same mentality going on today with the word terrorist. They've replaced communists with terrorists. But I just did a show last Friday night, a historical study on the Battle of Blair Mountain in West Virginia that took place in 1921. And the same thing was happening where you had American union workers who were striking against the corporations for better hours, better pay, and safer work conditions. And they ran the same campaign against them. They called them communists. They said anyone involved in these unions is a communist, and they were essentially blacklisted from the job field until new federal regulations made West Virginia comply with the federal regulations in about 1933. But I just want to throw that in there as another example of support of what you're saying, that they do that. They love to label people. They used to be communists, now it's terrorists. So, I'll put that back.
So I'm real sorry, Cole, that I didn't introduce you to the show. But Cole Johnson is in the studio, pretty much as co-hosting, and he might ask a few questions, you know, kind of, you know, things he doesn't know, honestly, and then pretty much all I might be able to explain. And then everybody learns here, but, you know, like he was talking about, this union work way back, this is before even the Cold War started, is that they used that word communist back then. This is right after the Bolshevik Revolution. And so those are the one that first Red Scare happened. There was 2 Red Scares, and I almost say that a third one has started nowadays. It's a third, I don't know what they call it, probably third Russian scare, it should be called, because now it's a scare against that the media's been putting against Vladimir Putin, but that's for another show. But, you know, they did that back then with the union workers, you know, and this is back when the corporations had absolute power about what they could do to workers. I mean, it was like, you didn't like it, you got fired, but there was barely any jobs that would be any better. And also, the deal was, this is back when you had kids working. You had kids working 7 in the morning to 11 p.m. And this is kind of one of the things that, you know, people overlook throughout American history, that we used to have this happen. You know, we still have horrible working conditions in many places, but we had that before, and that's back when the industrialists got the power at this time. This is where industrialists got to be billionaires around this time. You know, you had your Carnegie and whatever. You know, and here's what I'll say. They start from a young age or whatever, you know, even the high school. When you get to high school, they try to make it seem like Carnegie, Rockefeller, and whatever, all those, your J.P. Morgan, all those people who got super rich off those workers and what they said built America, they try to make it seem like they built America, like they did it by themselves almost or whatever, and the workers were just kind of a pesky parasite alongside them. This is what they say in class. Okay, this is the kind of propaganda that gets spewed out in history classes nowadays, just saying from an inside perspective. And it's disgusting. I'm the one who say, like, there was a question on there, it was like, do you think that this is a good bargain, whatever? I'm like, oh, hell no. I mean, these billionaires get to have unlimited money, while us people in the underclasses are going to be starving and, you know, practically barely making it, and then eventually might get fired, and then they might make no jobs whatsoever. You know, I was talking the whole time, I was against this corporatist ideas that they're trying to teach these kids, that these corporatist industrialists somehow built this country, when it was all those workers that you get no credit from. They won't talk about that, how it was millions and millions of workers built those railroads, built, you know, the skyscrapers and stuff like that. And, you know, this is one thing that I think is overlooked in this country, is the power of the worker. And that was probably already some people like, oh God, there he goes into his red communist rhetoric right there. I'm just saying, these people, you know, that want to say that, you know, that this should be allowed is just absolutely crazy. And I don't think anybody in the Trenton movement thinks people should be this rich, billionaire rich. because they know what happens is that the government will be bought out by these people. That's what happened with the Federal Reserve. That was exactly what happened. Okay, 1910. All those industrialists had gotten rich from years and years and years of exploiting workers got to buy the United States of America via the Federal Reserve Act. And this happened in 1910. They decided to do this. 1913, it was finalized, and it was done. The United States is owned by the bankers of London and other bankers in the Vatican. Down in Venezuela, I think that they had taken back power after the Bolivian Revolution. Well, it wasn't a revolution; it was really just an election. But it was kind of the start of a big tide in South America of leaders that were against this, United States world police tactics that they use now, where every country they can intervene in. If you look at them, like I said last time on my show, my first time here on this network, I said, about the United States war machine. It's just absolutely nuts the amount of countries we've been to. We've been to about 50 countries in the last 50 years. We go to a country about every year, maybe more, and, it's absolutely nuts, but, that's the bankers pulling the strings using their puppet army, the United States Army, and all the wars that are in the name of freedom. That's how they get the people behind them, and so they actually go and fight, because if everybody was to realize what it was about and people stopped fighting, well, they'd be powerless. That's the truth. If they did not have their giant armies to fight for them, these regular people that they've brainwashed, then they would be powerless. But the truth is they're just a bunch of old men who have a lot of money that can get a lot of favors done, but if the people that won't do their favors, don't do their favors, the people that they want to do their favors don't do their favors, well, then they're powerless. It's all the media right there. The media is able to deceive and give them all the power where they're practically leaders of the world. Otherwise, without their media, they'd be just like me and you. Anyways, and, in Venezuela right now, you see these big-time protests happening. What I want to put out there is a lot of these protesters out there have been, they're not really protesting for the things that you think they are. You think they're both protesting for freedom or whatever deal, but they're protesting just, the main goal of this opposition in Venezuela is to, denationalize the oil, looks like. And again, denationalizing the oil will make a lot of poor people even poorer because they can't afford the gasoline to get a job or whatever. Once the socialist government is taken down, I really hope it does not happen, because I know what kind of government's going to replace by, okay? There's also this other assertion, and a lot of the people who are in this liberty movement, whatever, that the United States is part of a socialist infiltration. It's been infiltrated by socialists, and so we must all freak out, and every socialist government in the world has to be bad. Okay, here's the deal that's wrong with that, is that, A, this country is not being infiltrated by socialists. It was infiltrated by fascists. One of them was the Bush family. Let me remind you, Prescott Bush was part of a plan back in the 1930s he was actually, he was a Nazi sympathizer. He helped fund the Nazis, the Prescott Bush, and he was part of, back then, it was similar to Occupy Wall Street, but it was a fascist coup, actually, pretty much. And it was a bunch of military they were planning to, do a military coup against the then government, FDR government, and replace it immediately. Pretty much was a place that was one led by some decorated war general, and it would be a new fascist government. It was a fascist coup that he was planning to do, and this is not even that far apart from the Bushes that you see today. This is H.W. Bush's, the older Bush's dad. And then also, it's also despicable what Samuel Bush, I believe his name is, that's his grandfather, H.W. Bush's grandfather, Prescott Bush's father. His plan was to, he got his plan. He was one of the main people in the Federal Reserve, building the Federal Reserve. So, you see, it was a fascist infiltration, other fascist infiltration. All these Nazi scientists brought over via Operation Paperclip in 1946, and after War II, brought it over, and we slowly became like Nazi Germany with all the surveillance and stuff like that, and all this anti-labor union attitude. Let me remind you that back in Germany, that was one of the things that Hitler pushed for, was against the labor unions. it was heavily against the labor unions. That's what fascism is. Part of it's all about. It's corporations taking all the power in the government, pretty much buying out the government, then using the government's military to enforce their corporate rule. It's pretty much when corporate and state power gets merged, and that's what's happened in America. Is all this corporate lobby and all this other stuff you see has pretty much made America where every politician has been bought out. Also, these bankers also, which banks in a way are just another corporation with a lot of money, give money to politicians to act the way how they act, and that makes your that's what makes your politicians the way they are, all bought out and everything. Hugo Chavez, he did a lot of actions that really helped the people. Let me remind you, 1 million Venezuelans were able to read after his program to eliminate illiteracy. In this country, here's the deal. The United States does have a 99% literacy rate, but that's people who can read a sign pretty much, who can just read a couple words, does 99%. A lot of that 99%, probably a good 20%, can't read beyond a first or second grade level. And there's probably a good percentage, maybe 60% of this country, especially in this new generation that can't read past the third to fifth grade level. The illiteracy rate in America is extremely high when you go to real effective literacy. Not just you can read a sign, you can read how to make his Pop-Tart or whatever. And people that can actually read at a level of intellectual where they can actually pick up, analyze, critical think is 10 to 20%, I bet. It's going to be super low. People have lost all analytical thinking because their education in this country, especially now you see this Common Core and this kind of crap that's being pushed, this plan to keep people dumb that's what it is. Dumbing down of this country is to, you dumbing down of this country is just going to make people, dumber and dumber and dumber. And people are going to just have people memorize and then regurgitate. Pretty much, memorize what your mainstream media idiot box tells you, and then you spit it right back out. And people are not even, it doesn't even look like cynics are even allowed to be comedians anymore. Used to have, people are not even allowed to be cynical. There was kind of the cynical people in the media and stuff like that. At least allowed some people to have the seed, the cynic who call against government or whatever. Like your George Carlin, one of my favorites, was around for a long time. But now you don't even have that in the media. You just have these people that are just have no government ideas or anything anti-government. And it's almost like, what the best example of a fascist government is that's been around for a while, and it's been, in modern day one is Singapore in a way. That's the extreme end of fascism right there. Where people get caned for spitting bubble gum on the ground, that kind of deal. That's literally how extreme it is over there. In Singapore, that's what we are worried about when the, martial law, whatever, happened in the United States. When it gets so extreme, just a couple words said could get you let into jail and whatever. And that's what's happening in the United States. We're becoming a police state. Our police have become militarized. Eventually becomes a military state. And now you're also a military junta. That's what, down there in Chavez, Venezuela, the police were not as militarized as you may think. The police state there was not much of a police state there, and they were a lot fairer than the last government, the one the United States supported. Well, let me remind you, Hugo Chavez was in jail 2 years before, and this was in the 90s. He was put in jail, and then after that, he got to be his rise of political power. He got voted into office right after this in 98. And Hugo Chavez later would, also another thing is just he brought so many people out of abstract poverty and brought them to a point where they could at least feed themselves, at least, where they didn't have to worry about starving to death. That's one of the things that I think a lot of American people, especially people who have lived in the middle class all their lives, do not really know what it feels like to, be to that, level of poverty where you don't know if you're going to eat today or whatever. It's a bad feeling when just in any kind of bad financial trouble, and this is what people have to suffer, get to the point where they do not know where they're going to stay tonight, where are they going to eat tonight, whatever. And this is what happened in the abstract poverty of the corporatist system of before. Before 98, it was a bad system. And there's another thing, is that a lot of South America knows how bad a military junta can get. I mean, even where my family's from, Colombia, was under a military junta under Gustav Rojas Pinilla. That was under martial law, dragged Colombia into a war that we had no involvement. I mean, there was no point of going to this war. Colombia was part of the Korean War, even though we had there was no stakes there. I mean, we didn't have any of Colombians over in Korea or whatever. It was just to help, and pretty much, as their word, kiss ass to the United States government at the time. And so South America is very cautious nowadays about ever letting a military state or corporatist right-wing government take over. That's why you see almost all of South America nowadays is now under the Bolivarian-type governments. And what Bolivarian means, I know I haven't specified this, is Simón Bolívar was the guy he was pretty much like the George Washington of most of South America. He was the one who pretty much fought the War of Independence was back in Gran Colombia against Spain. Then a lot of northwest South America were under one country. Pretty much all northwest South America was under Gran Colombia. Caracas was the capital, which is now the capital of Venezuela. That's why I put that as the location of this event. And Caracas was the capital, and then it all later split up into the countries that you know now today: Colombia, Venezuela, Bolivia. After Bolivar. Peru, a little part of Peru, Brazil, I think even. All those countries became independent after Bolivar's fight. And so it's kind of just what it is almost, I think, the Simón Bolívar part of this movement down there in South America is that Bolívar stands for liberation from imperial power, and that's what Venezuela's independence movement pretty much from American imperial power, United States government's imperial power around the world. This is what Chavez stood for, was a liberation from that. And, there was this idea also that, that murder rates went extremely high in Venezuela or whatever during the Chavista government down there, and that all this other stuff, that became a chaos. I want to remind you, this whole area has been destabilized, but it's not by any type of communist or leftist government, who it was. It's the United States government funding drug cartels. I mean, I don't know how the people in America are not so pissed off. I mean, I know why, because people became so complacent in this country. But how can we sit idle while people are getting murdered by the thousands by ruthless drug cartels such as the Sinaloa drug cartel? I mean, millions have died in these drug wars over time. And there was other drug cartels, but the drug cartels down in northwest South America, the United States are funding them. So this is not helping the situation. And, there's a lot of violence because of that, okay? And, they say that a lot go unsolved. Well, it's kind of hard when you have these professional killers practically doing the murders. I'm going to say that pretty much most of that violence that's happened in northwest South America is United States government funded. It's not a conspiracy theory. The DA and the Sinaloa drug cartel have reached deals. Also they say El Chapo, which was a famous drug lord over in Mexico, was captured recently. But honestly, truth is that El Chapo's probably either living in Washington, D.C. in the White House. That's what I said. But he's probably honestly in Fiji, the true guy, or somewhere else way far away, and that's his body double because they try to say U.S. authorities were part of that, but I really doubt that. U.S. authorities are going after any drug cartels. After I saw what we did during the 80s, well, we pretty much ran the drug trade. We ran it all the way from each step, going back from Colombia all the way up to the United States. Pablo Escobar was pretty much they probably killed him just so he wouldn't talk. The United States was the reason why he got to be a multi-billionaire. and especially it did help the trade going through Panama by helping that drug lord of a president, Manuel Noriega, who probably was captured. I think that after it was revealed what was going on in Iran-Contra here, and they pretty much just had to clean house and deal with new leaders, pretty much. But after Iran-Contra scandal, of course, was when there was the Iraq-Iranian war going on, and pretty much the deal was that we gave Iran weapons for money to fund the Contra rebels, and the Contra rebels, we also found out we were doing a cocaine trade through Central America, where the Contra rebels were fighting leftist governments in Central America. You see the kind of deal here that the U.S. is supporting drug cartels, and you're going to blame the violence on the Venezuelan government. Doesn't really make much sense there, unless you really think they're like working together or something like that. But they're not, because you see the kind of just absolute berating they do on the media against the Venezuelan government, and the kind of the actions that Hugo Chavez did shows. I mean, these are pretty big actions of getting all of the gold back from from these bankers or whatever, and bringing it back to Venezuela. He was able to nationalize the oil, a big step right there, which a corrupt government would probably nationalize the oil, give none of it to the people, and then he would receive all the money that the government, if Hugo Chavez was really corrupt, he would then steal all the money that he was getting by nationalizing the oil, like presidents in the United States have done or whatever, was all kinds of things. When they get lobbied out, that's what would probably happen. And if he's really corrupt, but no, Hugo Chavez just denied whatever money would be there, and save that country from the pretty much having a corporate coup. And there's also this attitude, with a lot of people in this quote-unquote liberty movement, is that this idea that we have to cling on to capitalism no matter what, that capitalism is the sole ideology that works and every other ideology is a failure. But, okay, the United States is not capitalist anymore. I'll give you that. It is a fascist country. But you can't just demonize every other system, including socialism down there in Venezuela, when they're doing big steps against the bankers and the elite, and are helping us, continue this fight against the New World Order. I mean, if we're going to turn our last allies around the world, perhaps Iceland or a socialist government or whatever, if you turn on your last allies, you're going to have people that were against the New World Order helping the New World Order do the final steps to bring the New World Order into reality and actually having a New World Order. And then we're all of a sudden under the one world government. Because there's only a few governments left, and almost all of them are, in a way, socialist. Okay, you look at Iceland, socialist; Syria, socialist party; Iran, in a way, is a socialist party. There's a socialist capitalist hybrid. Okay, Venezuela, socialist country. There's only a few of them left, and most of them, the only one I can think of that might not be is the Hungary that recently kicked out the IMF. They're kind of avoid the bankers right now. There's a regular capitalist country. Russia's a hybrid. They are, it looks like that they've kicked out a lot of the Rothschild bankers types, and they've jailed a lot of the oligarchs there, and also the fact that there's been a lot of propaganda put out against Putin saying he's a Freemason. But it turns out that picture that's been widely put throughout the internet saying that Putin's a Freemason, it turns out that's that picture is actually he's wearing a traditional Vietnamese outfit. So that's actually a lie. Some kind of disinformation been put out there, which, believe it or not, there's people hired by the United States government to put out disinformation, confuse people, and spread propaganda and all that deal. All throughout the internet, they spread false, deceptive lies all throughout the internet. And there's people sitting in an office, probably right now as we speak, getting paid to do this, or during the day or whatever when they get paid to do this. It's absolutely terrible that that these people are doing this, really deceiving everybody. But this is just another thing of a tyrannical government does. Everything, though, that is going on in the United States is not that of what happened during United Soviet Socialist Republics rise to power, USSR, or any other socialist countries rise to power. This is all the things that are happening in the United States right now is pretty much what happened during Nazi Germany's rise to power. Okay, let's look at some of the things. Corporatism, one of the main steps of fascism, pretty much is the ideology of fascism, takes place. Check. Okay, heavy militarization, or expanding the military all around the world. Check. Having a big giant corporate paramilitary is extremely powerful. They had their deal that started with ST. You can look it up. I mean, the German paramilitary. You just look it up. It's a word I don't think at any time I could pronounce. And then we have Blackwater nowadays over here. Okay, then you look at other things. Support of gun control. Hitler, check. Our government, check. Now, yes, Hitler did lift the gun restrictions in 1938 to all citizens, but being a citizen in Germany was kind of a subjective term. It could be easily stripped of you if you were Jewish or whatever. There's also other ways that you could be stripped of citizenship in Nazi Germany. I would be stripped of it probably for just having Slavic blood. There's many ways that you could be stripped of your gun rights by not being allowed to be a citizen in Germany. Being black or whatever. There was many ways that you could be. That there were many things that Germany did not consider being part of being a citizen. Other ways, having health care, universal health care is not solely a thing of the left or right. It's a both, and pretty much Germany just continued having universal health care in Germany. And here we have the Obamacare, but they're both Obamacare is a flawed system. And pretty much Germany had a different idea what to do, but it just stayed around. So this idea that Obama, that socialized healthcare is a thing of Nazism is somewhat. It's just that it's a thing of any government, and it's just that they happen to keep it. So that's a check there. Another similarity, you have this mainstream media that absolutely lies or whatever and tells a lot of false things. Check and check. You can keep going. It's like you can go 15 steps about how the United States became fascist and how they did it. But the very first step was the Federal Reserve. And having fascist families like the Bush who get high political power, that was another way they did it here in America. It might not be the ethnocentric fascism you saw in Germany back in the 40s, but in some degrees it even is, but it's still fascism. It's still corporate power getting extreme power in it, and to the point where they can eliminate all their enemies using the police state, their militarized police. I mean, we are at the point where at any moment Barack Obama has given himself power enough to where he can declare martial law at any minute. Like he made an executive order back in 2012 that pretty much says in any second he can declare martial law without any other approval. So if it ever gets hot, or whatever happens, any kind of disaster happens in the United States, just watch out because that's going to be the next step. It could happen very easily. Now, going back to one of the criticisms of Hugo Chavez is that there was some. You had to do some measures that might have been somewhat drastic, but there was a lot of crises in Venezuela, especially the fact that the United States got involved there in 2002. Another time the United States has tried to do regime trade and get them to get their dirty paws all over our country was then. And then they did that with, they had to, they put they tried to put in their puppet, I think, for a few hours or something like that. They had a coup, but Chavez reinstalled the power. This was in 2002, and so there was a lot of these kinds. There was a lot of crises happening, and you see, there's talk, and I don't know how true it is, but there's talk about even some mainstream type media in Russia even said this, that that there was a chance that Hugo Chavez was killed by was actually killed, and that cancer was actually a weaponized cancer. I'm not going to go too deep in this, but the CIA did have, and also the Russians too, both had during the Cold War pretty much a cancer weapon program.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
I'm on board with you on that one. I do believe that they use cancer as a weapon, and have throughout this past decades. I was thinking it would be a good time to take a break. Can I take a break real quick?
Okay. Sure. We can take a break if you really want to right now.
Is that all right? I mean, or not?
I mean, if you want, I kind of wanted to go to 9 o'clock and then take a break. I mean.
Okay, sure.
I mean,
no problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just let me know. Okay.
And yeah. So continuing with the show, that we pretty much had there's a very high possibility that could have happened very much. I mean, it's no longer pretty much like the JFK and Dealey Plaza getting shot, that kind of assassination anymore. It's now way more covert and that kind of deal. I mean, at this time, about 10 South American leaders had got cancer out of nowhere, pretty much. All around 50 years old. It wasn't like they were all old or anything. Of many different kinds. And, Chavez, he had the best health care in the world. This is what I have to put. He had the best health care in the world in Cuba. Cuba has the best health care in the world, and he still didn't get cured of his cancer. And he had it looked like he had something that wasn't even a natural, that could not be fixed, and it was like almost made. I could go deeper, but I don't really want to, because it is, I don't have really evidence to show anymore about, what kind of things happened that was abnormal, whatever. But just I know that he had 4 surgeries from the best doctors in the world, and he still did not get cured. I mean, that's a very odd thing to happen. And, also it's a thing that happened all at the same time, all these South American leaders getting, all getting the cancer at the same time. And then this is not the first time they've used biological assassination before. It's pretty much proven that the famous Palestinian leader Arafat, I mean, there was a lot of evidence. I mean, he had cyanide on his clothes, or arsenic or something like that. That Arafat was probably used, they poisoned him, the Israeli government or whatever, and they took him out that way instead of, shooting him or whatever. So it shows that they're not doing these biological assassinations rather than old-fashioned actually shooting them assassination. And, that's a possibility. Maduro claimed that when he died, I think the day after the day of it happening. And then the State Department was like, oh, that's bullshit, that didn't happen. Well, not those exact words, but that's what they try to say. But, but they will not mention how those things actually do exist. And the United States government is still trying to do this conspiracy to take out the Bolivian government, replace it with a corporatist government down there in Venezuela. You see, they're trying to do that. That's what that staged opposition over there very much was, because was Leopoldo Lopez, and he was arrested because they're doing the violence. It's a violent protest. These aren't your little peaceful protesters that you see like Occupy Wall Street or whatever. This is a violent protester that was and the leader of it, Leopoldo Lopez, had fascist beliefs and stuff like that. I mean, that's why I think that That's why I think that, because Maduro pretty much just said this guy is a fascism, Leopoldo Lopez, who was one of the main opposition leaders. Then there was Enrique Capriles, which was pretty much just a banker puppet, pretty much just a corporate oil companies, pretty much controlling him. That's what he was, pretty much. He was going to just unnationalize the oil, give corporate government all the power to the oil, because it would be a new corporate government would replace the old one, the Bolivian government, that's working to still is bringing people out of poverty by the bunches. While you see here in America millions of poor people are being made, there millions of poor people are being brought up. It's the opposite. Obama is Obama's displaying characteristics of a fascist, bringing all your rich friends richer and bring all the poor into absolute destitute, while you have over there, the disparity in wealth over there has dropped when it comes to there's a lot more people in the middle class. It's actually, and also the best thing, people no longer in abstract poverty. The absolute worst thing that can happen. I mean, that's where, you're literally making a couple dollars a day and you don't know if you're going to get fed tonight or whatever. And that's what you saw a lot of them over there in Venezuela. And he brought a lot of those people up. And this was a result of decades under United States corporate rule, very much. And, this also, one of the things that people are overlooking is that gold. Getting the gold back is one of the biggest steps to getting your sovereignty back from the bankers. He was getting your gold. That's what they take away from you, so they can get you in this loan, pretty much, where you have to keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and you're under perpetual debt. That's a system of banking that these international bankers play. These elites, all your people in the city of London. So that's the thing they do in the World Bank, the IMF. They get you in a system where you cannot pay it back off. Their goal is to keep you in debt. That's what they do to countries. That's what they've done in the United States, and that's what they wanted to do to Venezuela, but they're not going to do it. Bolivian government will stay in power, and they're not going to follow those corporate puppets that overlay the opposition. They're not going to follow the fascists. It's like the same deal over there in Syria. People are like, well, look at that dictator Bashar al-Assad. Look what he's done. Half the things are fabricated lies, and the other half is like you don't even know how bad the other government will be once those terrorists take over Syria, if it happens, and they install Sharia law. They don't know how bad it will be for non-Sunni Muslims over there, where even Shia Islamic people will be killed after the Sharia law is installed in Syria if it does happen. There'll be no secular government after that. The religious freedoms will drop over there in Syria, and that's the kind of deal. They don't think about what this opposition will bring after they take over. And honestly, the people are still relying in the truth movement, and it's sad. They're still relying on the fabricated lies of your Fox, your CNN, or your MSNBC. People need to start reading other media. People. I think some people are still literally just watching the Fox. People need to go to, here's some news places to go to if you want some more reliable news, at least closer to truth. Go to RT, go to Fars News, go to, if you can read in Spanish, some other, some Venezuelan sites, go to anything else but your mainstream media, because if you still are watching your mainstream media, which I think some people still are, you're still watching their Fox, and still, believe in the Fox Kool-Aid, they're going to still believe that that this is a socialist infiltration into this United States government, and they're going to be deceived. And all the other what I think is actually happening is only some of these are just still relying on the InfoWars or your Daily Blaze. Glenn Beck. Let me point out this this puppet right here, Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck is a shill. This dude was paid. Is pretty much getting paid by Israel. He got the Zionist Defender Award in 2010. This is literally the name of the award, Zionist Defender Award. It's his idea. He's pretty much here to tell you that the New World Order is not Zionist, and that's one of the main people behind the show. Israel is practically the headquarters of the New World Order, and he's pretty much to tell you that it is not, and to keep you distracted and thinking that other people are behind this infiltration in the United States and other people behind this New World Order. He's an absolute show. If you are still watching him, please stop watching him. I would rather, if you want to watch somebody, maybe watch Jesse Ventura, or and do not watch Alex Jones too much. I watch him only for comedic value at this point, because and some of his news articles. But I believe he's probably most likely he's either just nuts and the government allows him to be on the air because of that, or B, he's a paid agent. It might be just the first one. I don't know. If you want all other good sources of news, even the Drudge Report. I mean, you can get all around better sources than any of your mainstream media or any of those people. I just said were shills pretty much. You know, they get you a better idea. But I think the biggest, you know, the biggest news source that's quite big around the world that's not, you know, that's not working for the bankers solely, may not at all, is RT News. I think that's the best that it is, you know, from somewhat mainstream media. Also, Hugo Chavez, it's sad that people are gonna that people they'll be turning against the Venezuelan government and be part of that takedown over there, where, you know, all the stuff that he did for his country, you know, and he had to fight all that time. You know, he had to fight, you know, going through jail, and then then when he got the power, he had to fight all of his opponents and stuff like that. You know, especially with the Americans trying to do the coup over there. And then now the governments have to face this challenge. You know, United States diplomats, part of a conspiracy to take down the Venezuelan government by hiring college students pretty much there to, you know, to go protest. But, oh yeah, this is a big false flag here. People are trying to say that the Venezuelan government is doing or part of the sniper team, but this is a false flag. This is right now proven. The Venezuelan opposition hired snipers to shoot on their own people, just like the Ukrainian Euromaidan did to shoot on their own people, and make it seem like their respective governments were doing it to them. Yes, this is very true. And, you know, this is the spinning around. So the mainstream media, because they look at it, the Venezuelan government shooting their own people, but it is actually the opposition leaders shooting on their own people. Yes, it's very true. Actually, there's actually people in the part of the Venezuelan government over there that are protecting people from the snipers, but still the mainstream media is going to spin it because they're only working for the banker scum in this world. They're only working for the corporate scum to take it over and turn that place into destitute and have a few elite ruling that country. They're trying to do what they did. They're trying to do what they're doing in the United States over there to Venezuela, but Venezuela will stand as they're a strong people. And you looked at those rallies over there, it's very little people actually against the Venezuelan government, and tons and tons and tons of people against these opposition and for Chavez and Maduro, you know, who's the current president of Venezuela. Anyway, Venezuela is some of my family live in Caracas. I mean, they used to live in Colombia, and plus Colombia a lot of my family live like right on the border with Venezuela. A lot of Colombians, you know, Venezuela is like an enemy country, but, you know, to my family and me, Venezuela is friendly, is kind of what is way better than Colombia's current government, you know, that got $6 billion from the United States to pretty much, you know, obey everything they tell them, you know, and also, you know, pretty much Colombia has paramilitaries, or, you know, paramilitary seem to be tools of any far right-wing government throughout history, you know, Germany, United States of today, Colombia, you know, they've been working with all these special interests to, you know, go and kill Nicolas Maduro, and then they tried to say that, you know, Venezuela tried to say that Colombia was trying to do the same Colombia tried to say that Venezuela was trying to do the same to them, but it was kind of a same back and forth type deal back last year. You know, there's been this fighting because it is one of the last countries that, you know, that's still a United States that hasn't broken away from the chains of the United States is Colombia. You know, they have Colombia is their puppet, and, you know, as you see, it looks to be the Secret Service prostitute party town. You know, they got caught there in Cartagena. You know, that's what it pretty much is pretty much a party town for a lot of these right-winger types in the United States government probably go to. You know, and while that happens, you know, they support the Colombian government. Even the Colombian government, they practically have Jim Crow laws down there, you know, segregation. I mean, there's a lot and, you know, we still have this real attitude of racism down there in Colombia. You know, and they support this government that pretty much actively supports it. where black Colombians, are only allowed to have certain jobs. I saw it myself. They're living in these little shack towns up in the mountains. And they have this. It's this attitude. The attitude in Colombia about the people is that they're like, well, we're not racist. We get along with them perfectly fine, but they don't live anywhere near them half the time. So it's like, okay, that's pretty easy to say. I mean, you can put my worst enemy 30 miles away in a mountain, and I'm going to say, I get along with them perfectly well nowadays, if I don't have to deal with them. And that's what they're promoting as the United States government. They don't care that this is the kind of racism they promote, while Venezuelan government has promoted equality and has stopped a lot of hatred. There's a lot of racism left over from old attitudes that used to be around from the world, kind of spread from European imperial powers, I guess, maybe long lasting from the Spanish imperial powers. Some of them almost self-identify as white, so they're going to have racism, or even the ones that are not going to be racist against the Afro-Colombians there, or Amber Indians or whatever. But Venezuela actively supported equality of anything pretty much there they had and took away just also this aspect of extreme Vatican control of the area. I think I feel that in South America that's the thing that getting away from will be good, because what the Vatican's involved in. We all know that the Vatican was involved in helping sneak Nazis out of Germany. We know that they were involved in covering up child molesting scandals with their priests and stuff like that. We know the Vatican have one of the most secretive banks on the planet, maybe next to the Federal Reserve, the most secretive bank on the planet, maybe even more secretive than them. We know that they have helped support the Beretta Arms Company, maybe the biggest arms manufacturer in the world, and help them, make guns for more wars, and they profited off of wars of the Vatican. We know that the Pope name, the Vicar of Christ, is actually means substitute or anti of Christ. We know that they're practically almost in a way mocking of the Christian religion and doing everything opposite of what the Bible says, abridging the Bible or whatever, taking out big parts. And I feel that's what's happened. There's been some good priests that are Catholic, but I feel that the actual leadership of the Vatican is very corrupt nowadays, and it's been maybe for a long time. And let's go back to the fact of they've been moving forward, and it's not like the kind of deal where here in the United States where they're able to throw a race card. They're not criticize Hugo Chavez because Hugo Chavez was a common man there. I mean, there was nothing different about Hugo Chavez that they could say, well, you're discriminating against a black man like Barack Obama, where they're able to say, oh, you're racist against black people because Barack Obama's a black man. But there's nothing that they could throw a card against the leaders. So it's not like they're promoting equality without race baiting. That's what I'm saying. They're fighting racism without race baiting. Both ends of doing that, let's get real with race, is that you can't bring race, you can't bring political correctness into everything like our government wants to do. You can't fight racism by bringing race into everything. You're just going to spark more racism by race baiting. That's what happens. Morgan Freeman recently said one of the most smartest things I've ever heard about this topic. It was simple. It's like, how do you stop racism? You stop talking about it. That's the deal. You make it where people don't see color anymore. And people don't want to get real about that. This touchy subject, but I'll get real about it. And if anybody ever wants to call me anything, well, it would be ridiculous. But and Venezuela's government sparked a new wave, though, of governments doing pragmatic decisions, that were in the best interest of the people, best interest. Like, okay, this Bolivian revolution down in Uruguay, they have this president named Jose Mujica. Mujica legalized marijuana by doing that, but he also did another step to eliminate all the thugs and drug cartels in Uruguay. He made sure they sold the marijuana at a lower price than the cartels. The cartels are selling at $2 a gram. They're selling at $1.40 a gram. So that one very practical decision they did right there. And then the United Nations came after saying, you're in violation of drug treaties made before. But, he's not good. He doesn't care. And he's a very humble man, considering that he spent 15 of his years in prison. A lot of these leaders are humble from having to spend time of being, at their lowest. I mean, that's probably at the lowest of your life. It would be that deal, being incarcerated, being in prison for 15 years. That's a long time. And Mujica got no coverage from the mainstream media, ever. When they give a lot of coverage to Mandela, it's kind of interesting why they did that. Mujica also, he's considered the poorest president in the world, because here's what he does. He gets $12,500 a month for being president, and he gives all but $1,250 of it to charities and stuff like that. He lives very humbly. He doesn't walk around in a suit and tie like most presidents. He walks around like a commoner. I think he doesn't even have like a presidential limousine. Last I saw him, he's running around in a Vespa. I think that this whole Bolivian revolution, there's been roadblocks to the elite's plans throughout history. One of the roadblocks was when World War II didn't go the way they expected it to. They didn't expect Stalin to go. They didn't expect Stalin's army, because it wasn't Stalin who won World War II. It was Stalin's army who struck back against the Nazis. They were expecting Nazi Germany and Stalin's Russia to stay friends and also I think they were expecting the United States to stay. They were expecting to infiltrate there, and they were going to have all of. I think they were honestly expecting after World War I they were going to do this, because they were going to do the fascist coup here. They were going to have the White Russians win over the Bolshevik Revolution, putting a fascist government there, having a fascist government in Germany, have all of the world's powers aligned on one political ideology, and they were going to put their New World Order in by the end of probably the 20th century. Then they had some roadblocks in there. Then they had World War II didn't go the way they did. They didn't expect Hitler to go in and invade, immediately take over, which the troops weren't going to, take over Western Russia, and the troops resoundingly came back at Stalingrad. The biggest battle of World War II, and came back and fought back. They didn't expect all that to happen, I don't think. They also didn't expect the Bolshevik Revolution to go the way they did, where they would eventually lose control of Russia. The point was that they would take full control of Russia in the end, but after Stalin was gone, I think that they didn't expect Khrushchev to be around. They thought that Stalin would have eliminated all of his enemies, and they would continue having their kind of puppets in charge. But Khrushchev was still around the power. He was one of the few people that survived Stalin's purges, and he did, and he took power. And then until in the 1980s, when Gorbachev and Yeltsin, took control of Russia, then they returned to oligarch rule. Then I don't think they expect the next part where Putin took control of Russia and went against them, and now looks to be going completely against them. They don't expect a lot of things on. They can't plan everything out. It's not like they have control of everything that happened in whatever government they take charge of. Like, they expected Khrushchev, every person that was against Stalin, to be wiped out in the purges. But, Khrushchev survived. So I think there's been some roadblocks. And this is one of the roadblocks here is, the fight back in South America. With these people that were in prison, and then they probably, from the bankers' perspective, thought they were done. They would never get the political power, these little rebel groups or whatever, all throughout South America. And they did take power. And, they eventually threw out the corporatocracy, and especially Venezuela. Venezuela got back to gold. That's one of the biggest steps you can ever do. And for your sovereignty, to get back your sovereignty, you have to take back the gold. You can't do like what, Germany has no sovereignty. They're playing the bankers' puppets. That's why they've been the head of practically the European Union. Because they're helping, doing the bankers' plans of making continental governments that will lead to a world government. And by doing that, they have, by having the continental governments, they're going to eventually, this is like a it's a frame to making the world, putting a world government on top of there. It's almost like a substructure down to the actual nation state that they're all controlled, and that's what they've almost gone to. And if we don't start doing something now, as the people of the world, we're going to be under one world government in 20 to 30 years, because it's went down to only it's less than 10 countries, I'll tell you that. There's less than 10 non-restaurant countries on the planet. And, Venezuela's one. There's Iceland's another. There's Syria, Iran, all those, North Korea, Cuba, and possibly Hungary, Russia. That's about it. There might be a couple others. I don't know. There's many different lists of how this works out, but they have more influence in some countries than others. U.S. they have extreme influence because they practically have them with one of the main three wings under the Israeli headquarters. The Israeli headquarters is pretty much who controls it from Tel Aviv, and Israel, with their lobbying group, they're able to control their military wing, the United States. They're able through AIPAC or whatever. They have their banks at their disposal because a lot of them are Israeli citizens, so they have the banks at any time to be used. And then you have the third thing is the Vatican. The Vatican, it's just another banking fund. It's another Bank of London in a way, but then it has that religious power that a lot of people could continue to follow it. By continuing to follow it, they're going to be deceived into worshiping something that's, not true, That's not true Christianity. I'm just going to point that out there. But I'm not going to get too religious on that fact. That's another show. Make Cole or somebody else. Maybe we can do that one day. But when it comes to also the other things that have been done under the under the Chavez rule down there. One thing is that it's one of the few good things they have in this generation for the people, because honestly a lot of stuff against a lot of power has been taken away from the people in the last 20 or 30 years. Under the United States, this is the point where it's went pretty much to a police state now. I mean, in the next few years, I wouldn't be surprised to see the military junta be put into the United States. It could happen at any point. And also, another thing is that the socialist governments are demonized by the media, but one of the things is that everything that all the things that keep people in constant stress over here, the United States, where they keep you preoccupied with a million things. They don't under these moderate socialist governments like in Libya or Venezuela. In Libya, practically everything that you could imagine was paid for. And the people that were against them were people that just wanted, these were Islamic extremists that wanted Sharia law. They were against secular government, which means secular government was that just means you have freedom of religion pretty much, and that's what these Sharia law terrorists that have been funded all over in the Middle East are. Also, I'll get the exact list actually of what, because Gaddafi and Chavez were actually pretty similar. They were very similar in what they thought. There's a big list of things. That was 2011. They decided to throw him out because they also brought Sudan. They take him out in pairs. They took out the Africa, Sudan and Libya that were non-Rothschild at the time. They took out Iraq and Afghanistan at the same time. They took out Libya, or they're going to take out, Iran and Syria at the same time. If they do, they'll probably take out the communists at the same time, is what they're going to call them, Cuba and North Korea, if they ever do. Which, also another thing I want to point out is that North Korea's police state is not nearly as bad as portrayed in mainstream media. There's been there's pictures, underground footage being smuggled out there that really proves that it's not as bad as our police state. Our police state's got to be one of the worst in the world, where you can literally just moving your head up like you're gonna get up off the ground. That can get you tased, and then or getting up off the ground can get you shot, pretty much. going through, reaching it all for your pocket, like moving your hand like you're going to reach for your pocket. You know, and that's pretty much every time that someone gets arrested, you can be completely sitting. You can be sitting in a chair, they'll slam you on the ground. Police here are absolutely brutal, and you know, pretty much the police here. What they do is that a lot of them on drugs. They get a lot of people on drug charges, and a lot of time on marijuana charges. In fact, probably a big majority of them on marijuana charges. And by doing that, they pretty much just take people's marijuana and trade it for steroids for their police officers. That's pretty much how it works. And this fake war on drugs, when they're supporting drug cartels, you know, but if they were really against drug cartels, they would be helping countries fight the drug cartels. But no, they're funding them. What is this shit? How can you fight a war by funding those people that are in the, you know, by funding like the drug cartels? You know, and also, I'm still looking for that list of free stuff. There's some things I think there should be a guaranteed right. I mean, you know, I think there should be always, people should never have to worry about starving to death. That's honestly something that's extremely wrong with that. When you have a system that puts people in abstract poverty, and that's why I'm not for full-fledged capitalism, honestly, because that's what it still lead to. And it'll lead to industrialists getting rich and be able to put corporatism. It'll just happen that way. You have to have some things to keep in check. You have to have at least a hybrid system, I think. Because there's this attitude here in America where it's like, well, that's what's caused it, the socialism, it's the communism, to getting away from capitalism. No, it's the capitalism morphed into corporatism because you let industrialists get way too rich and they bought your country. That's what literally happened in the United States. Your country got bought. And then by doing that, the Federal Reserve now has the United States in a system of perpetual debt. And also, when a president did it, you know, tried to honestly take away the Federal Reserve's rule on the United States and tried to give our printing power back to the United States government and to the United States Treasury and not to the corporate government. So I'm saying the American government, the American people's government, not the corporate, the American LLC government. Well, when he gave the power to print for the American people to print money, he got shot in the head on national television. So, it wasn't the first time it happened. You know, there was assassination attempts when Andrew Jackson defied the bankers' attempts to, you know, put in the Second National Bank of the United States. They tried to put a centralized bank back then. And they tried to put they tried to put in the first bank of the United States, which was under the Jefferson. Well, actually, yeah, Alexander Hamilton tried to do that, but Jefferson's vice president shot that traitor. You know, John Burr shot the traitor, which then later in history nowadays they try to portray John Burr as a traitor, and you know because he escaped to France and decided it was Napoleon, even though Napoleon was fighting against the British monarchy, and installed the first ideas of, you know, secular government and all that stuff. That's one of the things I believe is the most important things, is not getting persecuted for whatever religious belief you have. You know, he installed the belief of secular government, and also installed the belief of, you know, anti the regular. I mean, his government sort of turned into a monarchy, Napoleon's government, but he turned to, you know, the British. It was not the same kind of like the British. It started, and then his later family installed the seeds of having, you know, the kind of government that, you know, led to an all-around good country was around 1900. You know, where any poor person could go there and kind of live, you know, real cheaply. You know, but then later in later the France nowadays is now, it's iffy. I mean, you have pretty much a warmonger in there starting all kinds of wars in Central Africa, trying to restore it to the French monarchy days of King Louis or something like that. And then you have the United States helping them, where the French trying to start a war in Syria. You know, they're just another mainstream power, it looks like, even though they are under the term socialist. And that's one of the bad socialist countries, is France right there. Is the one that's pro-Western, is the one that's real bad right there, is the French. You know, Gaddafi, going back to him, that was another thing, is that, one of the people that went after Gaddafi, I believe, heavily was the French government, the UK government. They went after, they made that NATO mission to go there and bomb the country. And it wasn't the first time they tried to kill Gaddafi. They killed Gaddafi's son back in the 80s under the Reagan's administration, which Reagan tried to kill him, tried to do regime change back in the 80s. And what the thing about Reagan's government is that Reagan did, a lot of people consider, there was also this attitude that he was he was all good when he was in charge or whatever, but Reagan was what's the best way to put this? He was a two-faced person. Yes, Cole?
I was going to let you know you have a caller in the studio that wants to say something.
Okay.
Bring them in, or cue them in a minute.
Let me make this one point, and then we can bring in the caller. But I was going to say, Reagan acted like the supporter of liberty on one hand, but then he started warrantless wiretapping of phones. He was the one who started that back in the 80s. So that's my point on that. Also, just a little tidbit of information. It's kind of a joke on when I say this all over. My Ronald, 6 letters, Wilson, 6 letters, Reagan, 6 letters, 666 Ronald Reagan. And I'm like, makes perfect sense, actually. Anyways, bring in the caller.
Hi. This is Josh. Josh, you're live on Stable Radio.
Yeah. This is the first time I've ever heard you guys. That's awesome. I had to call in because he hit the nail on the head right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Welcome to.
There's so much truth in what you just said.
Yeah. Well, what was the point you actually liked the best there, Josh?
I don't know, man. You pretty much got it. I would say about the socialism. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This show is kind of like, in a way, a reaction because this whole NWO, anti-New World Order movement has a lot of people though that are heavily against socialism. They believe this government's part of this socialist infiltration. But you look back at history, with the Bush family, who were a fascist family, they tried to do a fascist coup back in the 20s and 30s. This is a fascist infiltration by all means. The corporate power has taken over this country. This country's been bought by industrialists, these elitists in the past.
Right, like Prescott Bush and G. Farben and all that.
Yeah, Prescott Bush was a big part of that plot to bring in. It was a general, back then, and he was going to be a co-part of the leadership, the fascist leadership they planned, and that's what it was. I'm not exaggerating. It was similar to Germany's, Nazi party over there. Over here, they had that, and somehow that same Bush family was allowed to become, have 2 presidents, possibly a third one in the future. I don't know, Jeb Bush. He got to be the governor.
Right. It's just like Operation Paperclip, you know what I mean? Just keeps going.
Yeah. Operation Paperclip, and they brought all the Nazi scientists over to America, and got a lot of them that really should have been executed. The rest never walked free again in their life. A lot of those people should have never did, but they got to, and they got to live to be old or still alive. Some of them, probably, in under Operation Paperclip. And by doing that, it's almost like they infiltrated the United States government even more. What happened is it's almost like the Germans lost World War II. This is the best quote. Germans lost World War II, but the Nazis won. The Nazis got the win by pretty much turning the United States into what they had over there in Germany, slowly but surely. But the Germans lost it because they had to suffer all the things that happen in a post-war country like there, where they had the money that was devalued so much until the 1980s, and they had also the division of the country, where they had West and East Berlin, and that kind of deal.
Did you ever hear of ideological subversion, KGB tactic?
I think I've heard of it, but you kind of explain it for the rest of the audience.
Basically, it's like how you take over a government. It's pretty much like, I don't know, it's like a quiet way to take over the government.
Yeah, I think now I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's taking over government without actually doing something, big, like having to do an invasion or a coup or anything. You just slowly.
Right. Like I think it was Khrushchev. He said, we can take over America without a shot fired.
Yeah, you slowly plant the seeds of whatever. You plant the seeds, the ideology into the country, and I think that's what happened with. I think this is what happened all the way back to Germany, and possibly going back. You're going to go back way back to the 1800s. What led to all these other people like Alexander Hamilton and stuff like that. That was the first example in a way. Alexander Hamilton was a person who wanted to put in a bank and reconcile with the British right after the war happened. There was a few of these people around that time, pretty much British ideological subversion agents that were pretty much just trying to bring.
I forgot American. That you were talking about Hamilton like that. That was one of the things that I wanted to call and talk about Hamilton there. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Most people don't realize that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this has been going on for a long time. This is talking about like 1805 here, when the first national bank was. They tried to put it to power, and try to centralize the wealth in this country to one banking institution, and Hamilton tried to do that, and by doing that, he paid the price. I mean, he had John Burr shot him in a duel, and they tried to make it seem like he was a traitor, John Burr, even though that...
It was that Aaron Burr, right?
Huh?
It was Aaron Burr, correct?
I think it's John Burr was the guy's name, and he was the vice president of Thomas Jefferson.
I know. I'm a Jeffersonian, trust me.
Yeah, he was exiled to France, I believe, after that. And I was talking about this was only the one of 3 attempts, and the third one they succeeded with the Federal Reserve. Pretty much the wholesale buyout of the United States. But then the second one was Andrew Jackson, who suffered 2 assassination attempts against him, and he talked about his struggle about the bankers. I mean, his final words is that I killed the bankers, because he actually did take out the Second National Bank of the United States. He was able to defund it, and he talked about he wasn't for centralized banking. Andrew Jackson was for, if any banking, local banking may stay at the highest, but not this big level where all the wealth can go to a few bankers in one banking institution.
Well, do you know about the difference between Keynesian and Austrian economics?
Yeah, so I sort of get what Austrian economics is. Austrian economics is like, isn't that just like last-year economics? Keynesian, I'm not exactly sure what it is. Isn't that more?
Well, like modern money mechanics, I believe, is the book that the Keynesian book. It's pretty much the Keynesian Bible. But the 10% reserve rate, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, no, I don't know too. That's honestly one of the things I'm actually kind of weak on, is the actual all that economic kind of stuff. I just get the gist of Keynesian versus Austrian economics. I know that Austrian economics is laissez-faire, because I know that's kind of what you see the Libertarian Party supporting or whatever. And I know Keynesian, I know that's more. I know this got to be more state-controlled economics, because I know, like, you see the Democrat Party and stuff like that supporting Keynesian economics.
Right. Yeah, we're seeing the collapse of Keynesian economics right now.
Yeah, the Keynesian economic is this house of cards that's pretty much existing all throughout economics in the United States is about to collapse, and that's what's going to cause a dollar collapse eventually. I mean, this is not scare tactics at this point. All these top economics or economists, and even like my dad knows economists back from, believe it or not, he actually went to the Army and then became a big, like, he went through all the economics school and everything, and he pretty much told my dad, yeah, that's pretty much what's going to happen, actually. I mean, we
got the Hegelian dialogue going on right now, dude. I'm telling you, they're going to collapse that system, and then they're going to offer the solution for it, and that's how the NWO is going to, come into play.
Yeah, it's exactly how it's going to happen. You know what Rockefeller's quote was? David Rockefeller's quote. We're just waiting for the right crisis. That's what they are waiting for. They're just going to make the crisis happen, and then they're going to offer the solution. Everybody's going to think it's such a great idea. They're going to make. I think they're going to honestly make their continental government first. They're going to make their North American Union first, which will be. They're going to make all their continental governments first, and then they're going to all unite under the New World Order. Because
what do you think? What do you think that's going to, obviously 9/11 didn't do it. What do you think they can actually pull, bigger than 9/11?
Yeah, it's kind of scary when you think about what could be bigger than 9/11, but honestly, I think that the dollar collapse, but if an actual false flag, another false flag to actually put in the martial law, I think it's going to be just like 9/11, another thing pretty much initiated by Mossad, because Israel was saying last year that they're pretty much warning that the United States is going to be struck in 3 to 4 years, almost like they knew it's going to happen. So I think they're already planning for something to happen under Hillary Clinton's administration, probably.
Like what Lindsey Graham was talking about with the nukes and everything.
I don't know if it's going to be nukes, but I think it's going to be something big, and it could be possibly that big. I mean,
yeah, the Mossad ain't no joke though, man. I know Krav Maga and everything. So they're pretty hardcore over there, man.
Yeah, but they're probably the highest battle-trained army on the planet because they're in a constant war with the people. I mean, that's the deal, that Israeli-Palestinian conflict over there. What the Israelis, are fighting pretty much a country that does not have an army, and what they're doing is practically committing, in a way, almost a genocide over there. They've killed so many innocent Palestinian people, torn down their houses and stuff like that to support their Zionist government. And then anybody who criticizes Israel is considered an anti-Semite because you see what Netanyahu said on the television the other day. He said exactly those kind of words. Anybody who's against us is an anti-Semitic bigot or whatever. And that's not true because, you see actually Jewish people themselves protest in the state of Israel. They're tired of
absolutely. Well, the thing about that is and the thing that, that's going on with us in Afghanistan right now. I mean, Russia couldn't take Afghanistan. We can't take Afghanistan. Nobody could. I mean, I'm pretty sure Napoleon tried to take Afghanistan as well. I mean, when it comes down to it, we're not going anywhere in America. You know what I mean? They can't do it. They can't do it.
The deal with Afghanistan is that the point of the war is so different than what they tell us on the mainstream media. It's not about terrorism, of course. The point of this war over there in Afghanistan is pretty much to facilitate a drug trade. They're guarding poppy fields over there, and Afghanistan. It seems to be a place where empires go to die. I mean, the Soviet Union tried to fight that war against Mujahideen terrorists back then, who later became the Taliban, and then Al-Qaeda and whatever. Osama bin Laden was a CIA agent in the 80s and that type of deal. Only like 3% of the country knows that. Well, anyways, when that happened, they lost that war. They literally drove home. I mean, before that, I'm pretty sure Napoleon did go there. I mean, this has been noted as the place where empires go to die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're in like USSR stage right now, man. We're about to go.
Yeah, the United States is about to leave that country. We'll have to leave Afghanistan, but it's only going to be replaced by it's only going to be replaced by another war, and that war is going to be a lot bigger, and it's going to probably be kicked off by whatever false flag thing that happens in the next few years. They're going to say whatever, Iran did this or Syria did this. The guy to go to that war, and that would be, I think we're going to be in Syria soon, and then they're going to say Iran did this, and then it's going to kick off a war with Syria and Iran versus U.S. and Israel, and that's going to be your big war right there going on.
Well, hear me out on this. Like, you know what's obviously going on with the Ukraine and all that right now. Russia, they send all that oil and natural gas out west there to Western Europe. Dude, Hear me out on this. what if they sell that natural gas? They cut off Western Europe. They start selling that to China based on the yuan, and completely eliminate the petrodollar.
That could very much happen. But you know what? That day that does that happen, that they sell to over there to China, whatever. That could, if they cut off the Western Europe supply and then they cut off the petrodollar, that'll be the day that the United States and the bankers are going to get real pissed off, and they're going to be fighting. They're going to start the giant war, the one that's been talked about since, ever since the start of the Cold War, the war between Russia and the United States government. And
I honestly, dude, I mean, I'm as patriotic as it comes, but I don't think we can take Russia.
Yeah, honestly, over this government, of course, I support the Russian government over this government because I see the Russian government has been practical and been trying to negotiate from stopping, they stopped Barack Obama and the United States government's attempts to go into Syria.
Mm-hmm.
They're helping out the guy I was just talking about. They're making sure that the United States does not get involved in Venezuela. They sent warships over to Venezuela to ensure that. That's what that purpose was. And then whenever Russia does anything like a small military operation, like when they did Georgia or whatever, or when they're doing Ukraine now and they entered Crimea, the United States media heavily criticizes the Russian government, even though, John Kerry literally said, I can't believe the dude said this, you don't invade a country on phony pretexts.
I was just about to tell you that. He quoted Mao Zedong on that. He said you don't just, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said something along the lines of, like, political power doesn't come out of the barrel of a gun. You know what I mean? Like, he pretty much quoted Mao Zedong on that one.
The funny deal is that considering the United States government's been in 50 countries or more in, 50 years or something like that? I mean, now you have this deal going on where Russia's been ever since they've only been in 10 countries around military operations ever since World War II, while America's been in over 50. And now they're doing this deal because if you look at the people in Crimea, it's a lot of Russian citizens who are under persecution from the new Ukrainian government. The new Ukrainian government a lot of the top positions are neo-Nazi leaders.
Mm-hmm.
These people are from some party. I forgot what the exact name of it, but John McCain was shaking hands with this guy, and then literally, like, at the end of the speech, he'd be giving doing the Nazi salute. This guy, this new Ukrainian government, a lot of these top positions are led by these neo-Nazis who plan, of course, the same kind of rhetoric is coming out their mouth that's anti-Slavic, anti-Slavic, and they're supposedly, anti-oligarch, but that's never what happens. They always are going under the pretext of stopping some, under some big attack coming from an outside force or whatever, and while they seize power, and then they're, like, the deal is, like, there in Ukraine is, like, probably everybody who's, they'll persecute Slavic, Jewish, or whatever people, but the rich ones are going to keep in their country.
Iran hasn't invaded anybody since, I don't know, they haven't invaded anybody in a couple hundred years. And, America had Saddam's back during the Iraq-Iran war during the 80s and everything like that. Well, like I always say, yeah, they have weapons of mass destruction. America's got the receipts for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Iran never did anything to anybody.
Yeah, Iran did not invade Iraq. It was the other way around. Iraq went into Iran and started that war, and that was, pretty much, actually in the long run, the United States actually supported both sides of that war, after the Iran-Contra scandal, we found that out. But, they supported Saddam heavily throughout the 80s. This is until pretty much right before 1991, they supported Saddam, and then all of a sudden they went in there because they invaded Kuwait, and then after that, then Saddam set his oil fields on fire, so I guess that stopped any
Did you know that was all about the petrodollar?
Yeah, because wasn't Saddam leaving the petrodollar at this time?
Oh yeah, dude. You don't invade you don't leave the petrodollar. Yeah, you're gonna get crushed. Gaddafi tried to do it, and I think Putin's gonna try and do it.
Here's the deal: if you're gonna leave the petrodollar, you better have a giant. You better have a giant army, and all be equipped and everything. You know, Saddam thought he probably could do it because he had the fourth biggest army in the world at this time. You know, when he was leaving. Until the end, he had the fourth biggest army in the world, Iraq. I mean, right behind Russia, China, and the United States. I think Russia could do it, honestly, if they wanted to, but you know, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen maybe in the next 5 years. I think it's a little bit down the road. But honestly, whoever wins, if Russia wins that war and ends the petrodollar, then we might just not see a new world order for a while.
Well,
or it might be.
What We have a little clause called eminent domain, and we owe China so much money right now. What if, you know what I mean? They crush the petrodollar, dude. America could sign over every one of our properties to China under eminent domain.
That's very possible. I mean, actually, it's already in the deal where a lot of stuff is being handed over to China, like all the fresh water in the Great Lakes and stuff like that. Literally, pretty much just big, you know, ships of water being sent back there to China. That's why they're getting Africa. There's one thing that there's going to be a shortage of in the future, and it's going to be fresh water, and there's going to be probably some wars over that. You know,
water's the new oil.
Yeah, we're running low on it. I mean, there's only one way it seems like you can, you know, completely, and it doesn't seem like it even works that well, but there's only one way you can kind of, you know, slow down that extreme demand for water is, you know, to have the desalination plants, you know, where you take the salt water and put it into water, but the only way it seems to work is if you have tons of labor available, like, you know, the only one that works really in the world is apparently, I think, in the United Arab Emirates, I think. And it's kind of sad how they have to keep that thing working. They have Filipino slaves, I've heard, pretty much.
Who do you think you and I are, man? We're that labor.
Yeah.
We just don't know yet.
Yeah, there's a high possibility we're going to be that kind of labor for those, you know, those really extremely hard jobs or whatever in the future that they're going to have people doing. I mean, they're going to get all the fresh water they can get, but one day that's going to be one of the things they're going to have to do. But, you know, I see the petrodollar what you're talking about in Russia, and yes, the pipeline, that's the Ukrainian deal and the Syrian deal. That's one of the things I've not talked about is all the pipelines going through those countries. Syria has a giant natural gas pipeline going through, and I think what they want to do actually is pretty much once they have control of Syria, then they can connect Israel to other countries and stuff like that. Ukraine has another pipe.
Other than the old heroin issue, they got the pipelines from the Caspian there in Afghanistan as well.
Yeah,
they
all kinds of.
But Bo, he doesn't. You know, he's not approving the Keystone Pipeline or anything like that. Canada's going to do the same thing. They're going to sell their oil to China. I think. Well, I always thought that Bo was like he's a Marxist infiltrator. He's KGB as they come, and we're not pushing oil in this country for a reason. He's an insider as far as I'm concerned.
I don't know, because we're just saying that Obama's not pushing the Keystone Pipeline, but I see Obama. But then again, I heard that he supports the Keystone Pipeline. I mean, he said just a month ago that he heavily supports it, and he's trying to reassure people that it's perfectly fine. I mean, there's a lot of people protesting it right now as we speak. Like, there was big protests just happening. You know, Obama also wanted the TPP. He's supporting all these big, and also did the Monsanto Protection Act. He's supporting all these corporate agreements, it seems like, you know. And I think, honestly, Obama is just another one of these, just like how it's been for the last 100 years, besides May Kennedy, who got shot trying to fight back against the Federal Reserve. I think he's just another corporate puppet. I think the infiltration already happened. It was one of the far-right, you know, fascist or whatever. He went back to it, you know, fascist / almost, it's feudal. That's what it is. The system they want in the future is like what you read about in the feudal system. You have everybody's going to be a serf working practically as a slave. You have your lords above you that practically own you, and the only thing you get
we're already slaves. I mean, one thing that I remember, I was in a political science class one time. That's what I went to school for, and I was in a political science class one time, and I was the only person that didn't raise my hand when my instructor he said about taxes. You know what I mean? He was like, "Who doesn't think that we should pay taxes?" Like, I was pretty much the only person that was about that. And the one thing I like to say is, well, if slavery is 100% of your labor, then what portion are you okay with being enslaved?
Yeah. So we're already at that point, but I'm saying that was another quote from Rockefeller himself, I think it was David Rothschild, one of those top people. He said, "Our plan is pretty much to do this and this and this, and then have the feudal system, and then install a global feudal system." That's the plan. They're gonna, and that's what they pretty much have people on with the taxes. You're right, because you are pretty much owned, in a way that Social Security number is your number to your debt to the bankers. The bankers own you. They're the lords. You're the serf, and then they say your tax dollars are going in to protect you via the military or the vassals. It's the exact same thing, but it's a little bit different. You're not restricted to a 20-mile radius like the real serf was back in in the medieval times, but it's similar. Yeah, it's a new feudal system under this deal.
I know they're pretty clever. They're pretty clever how they pulled it off. But Iceland overthrew their bankers. I have no idea why we couldn't do it here. You know what I mean? Like Ukraine didn't even have they don't even have a Second Amendment, and they overthrew the government. Yeah, it was Western backed and everything like that. But dude, we got like 100 million guns in this country, and we are somehow just dealing with this. I don't know why it's going down like that.
It's the mainstream media put it into the mindset of people that they have to support this government or whatever. But one more point is, like, look what also they did. I mean, this is why I was talking about Hugo Chavez, because Hugo Chavez, what he did to bring back the sovereignty of the country, did one of the biggest steps that, here's why we can't get back financial control of this country, is because we don't have our gold. Our gold is now in the hands of the bankers. Chavez got back his gold. There's all these big countries that don't have their gold now, and that was all taken away back in the 30s and stuff like that. And
1933.
Yeah, we took it off the gold standard. That's one of the things you need to be a sovereign country, is to have something that your dollar's actually backed by, not something like oil or whatever. What actual?
I don't know. Have you ever read a law dictionary?
A law dictionary? No.
Yeah, the difference between money and currency. Money is backed by a metal of intrinsic value, and currency is nothing. Currency is the belief in the system that holds it up.
We need money. Currency is pointless. I mean, that's what we have now. We have the Federal Reserve, no currency. It's backed by whatever the Federal Reserve says it is. Then we have then you have the dollar that we used to have. The United States dollar that we had until 1913 was money. It was backed by a precious amount of gold. Also, I want to say it is 9:58 right now. So, Cole, we have 2 minutes left of the show. You said we're going to 10 o'clock, and I don't know if you want to continue, if we can continue afterwards, or if you really have to go after 10. So, Cole.
Yeah, actually, I do need to go. So maybe we can pick this up next week. Do a continuation, or.
I might kind of just do a little bit of a continuation of the show next week, but definitely, yeah, Josh, call in next week because we're running out of time here, and pretty interested. You got political science degree. Where do you get your political science degree?
Well, I don't. I dropped out of school. Actually, I started school for history secondary education, and I wasn't in agreement with the Common Core, so I left that and I switched to political science and went to school for pre-law as well. So You know, never graduated though. I mean, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It was so fake. It was so fake to me. When I heard Marx, Engels, and all those guys, I got teachers in America telling me that the Communist Manifesto is something that we should preach. I wasn't having it.
Okay, well,
Clarion University of Pennsylvania. That's where I went to school at, and I also went to the University of Pittsburgh as well.
Yeah, it's been nice talking to you, Josh, but we are running out of time here. And thanks, everybody who listened into the show. Remember, everybody, fight back against the New World Order. And also, rip Hugo Chavez. Good night.
Nobody can stop it. Malcolm Little when he knelt before Elijah Muhammad, the comet that killed the dinosaurs, changing the earth. They love to criticize, they always say I changed for the worse. Like prescription pills when you misusing them, nigga. The Templar Knights when they took Jerusalem, nigga, and figured out what was buried under Solomon's temple, Al-Aqsa. The name is not coincidental. I know too much, the government is trying to murder me. No coming back like cutting your wrists open vertically. How could the serpent be purposely put in charge of the country? Genetic engineered sickness spread amongst me. My people are so hungry that they attack without reason, like a fucking dog ripping off the hand that feeds him. Immortal technique is treason to the Patriot Act. So come and get me, motherfucker, cause I'm not coming back. This is the point from which I can never return, and if I back down now, then forever I burn. This is the point from which I can never retreat, cause if I turn back now, there can never be peace. This is the point from which I will die, succeed, live in the struggle. I know I'm alive when I bleed. From now on, it can never be the same as before.